The terminal went silent when a German shepherd broke free from his handler, barking furiously at a pregnant woman near the security gates. She clutched her belly, shaking as passengers froze, fear rippling through the crowd. "Ma'am, don't move," shouted Officer Emily Carter, struggling to restrain her K-9 partner, Shadow. But the dog wouldn't stop. Every bark sharper, more desperate, almost human. No one knew it yet, but that moment of chaos was about to expose a secret no one was ready to face. What happened next would change everything, and prove that sometimes heroes don't speak, they bark. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The morning mist still clung to the runway of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, wrapping the tarmac in a thin silver veil. Dawn light bled softly through the high glass walls, casting reflections over rows of suitcases and hurried travelers. Overhead, the loudspeaker hummed with boarding announcements that blended into the low hum of jet engines. The air smelled faintly of coffee and wet concrete, that familiar scent of motion and waiting. It was Officer Emily Carter's first day back on duty. Emily, 34, moved with the steady discipline of someone who'd learned to carry both pain and purpose. She stood tall, about 5'9", with a lean, athletic frame built from years of training. Her dark brown hair, tied neatly at the nape of her neck, framed a face that carried quiet strength and a hint of tired warmth. There were small lines near her eyes, not from age, but from long nights replaying the same moment over and over, the explosion 2 years ago that had taken her husband, Detective Ryan Carter, and nearly ended her too. People said she had come back too soon. Emily didn't agree. She wasn't here to forget. She was here because duty was the only thing that still made sense. Beside her trotted her partner, Shadow, a 5-year-old German shepherd with alert amber eyes and a coat of black and tan that gleamed under the terminal lights. Shadow had once been the pride of the K-9 division until the same blast that killed Ryan had scarred his left hind leg. Now, though healed, he carried a slight limp, a reminder that both of them had survived the same fire. Emily always said they were two halves of the same scar. As they walked along Gate B, travelers passed with indifferent glances. Businessmen rushing with briefcases, families juggling passports, children clinging to stuffed toys. For most, security officers were background noise, but Emily never saw crowds as harmless. She saw patterns, hesitation, body language, things that whispered stories before words were spoken. "Easy day so far," she murmured, running a gloved hand over Shadow's back. The dog's tail flicked once, a soft gesture of acknowledgement. Then came the sound, not loud, but sharp enough to slice through the chatter of the concourse. A bark. It started as a low growl deep in Shadow's chest, like the earth itself rumbling. His ears pricked forward, nose twitching. Emily stopped mid-step. "What is it, boy?" The German shepherd stood rigid, eyes fixed ahead. Emily followed his gaze and saw her. A young woman had just entered through the security gate. She looked to be in her late 20s with olive skin and wavy chestnut hair that fell loosely over her shoulders. She wore a faded beige coat and held 2 paper shopping bags close to her body. But what drew everyone's eyes was her belly. Round, unmistakably pregnant. She moved slowly, almost carefully, as if afraid of every step. Her lips were pale, her eyes tired. Emily felt a flicker of sympathy. Just another traveler, maybe scared of flying, but Shadow didn't share that calm. His fur bristled, his stance shifted from alert to tense. "Shadow, heel," Emily ordered softly. But he didn't obey. He took one step forward, then another, tail stiff, ears locked. His gaze didn't leave the woman. The growl deepened, vibrating through the polished floor. Passengers began to notice. A little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, why's the police dog mad?" Before she could answer, Shadow barked, loud, sharp, urgent. The sound cracked through the terminal like a gunshot. The woman gasped and stumbled back, clutching her belly. Paper bags rustled, one nearly tearing at the handle. Panic rippled instantly. People turned, phones lifted, voices rose. "Please, make him stop," the woman cried, her voice shaking. Emily's pulse spiked. "Shadow, sit." But the German shepherd didn't move. He barked again, shorter, harsher, the kind of bark he used when he found something he couldn't ignore. "Officer Carter, report," crackled a voice in her earpiece. It was Captain Ross Miller, her commanding officer. Ross was in his early 50s, broad-shouldered with graying hair cropped short. Years in the force had carved patience and skepticism into his face. He was the kind of man who trusted rules more than instincts, which was precisely why he didn't always understand Emily. "Got a situation, Captain," she said, eyes still locked on Shadow. K9 alerting on a female passenger. Pregnant. No visible threat yet. Ross's tone turned clipped. "Copy that. Proceed with caution. Don't cause a scene." Too late. Security agents were already rushing over, passengers filming on their phones. Emily could hear murmurs building. "Is there a bomb? Is it drugs? What's happening?" "Ma'am, don't move," Emily shouted, stepping between Shadow and the woman. The woman froze, tears welling in her eyes. "I haven't done anything," she pleaded, voice cracking. "I know," Emily said evenly, lowering her tone. "Just stay calm." She crouched slightly beside Shadow, feeling the taut leash quiver in her hands. The dog's entire body trembled, not from aggression, but something else. His nose flared, nostrils quivering like he was picking up a scent invisible to everyone else. Something metallic. Chemical. Wrong. "Ross," she whispered into her mic, "I think Shadow's picking up trace chemicals." "Or he's reacting to stress," Ross countered. "You're making people nervous, Carter. Move her to secondary screening." Emily hesitated. Her instincts screamed to trust her partner. Shadow had never been wrong. Not once. Still, she nodded. Understood. Two officers approached carefully, one of them a tall man with sharp features and a security vest. "Ma'am, we're going to ask you to come with us. For a quick check," he said, his tone rehearsed. The woman shook her head violently. "No, I can't. I'm late for my flight. Please." Shadow barked again, stepping forward so abruptly that the leash snapped tight against Emily's grip. She stumbled, nearly losing hold. Gasps erupted around them. Someone shouted, "He's attacking her!" "No," Emily snapped. "Shadow down!" But the dog didn't attack. He stopped barely a foot away from the woman, his head tilted slightly, nose hovering near her midsection. Then he froze, eyes wide, breathing fast. He gave one short, trembling bark, then whined softly. The sound was haunting. It wasn't the noise of a predator. It was the sound of a warning. Emily's blood ran cold. "Captain," she said quietly, "this isn't right. He's not signaling explosives. It's something else." "Then find out," Ross replied. The two security officers flanked the woman. One reached for her bag. She jerked back, clutching it tighter. "Don't touch me," she shouted. "I said I haven't done anything wrong." Her voice broke, raw panic bleeding through every syllable. Emily stepped closer, softening her tone. "Ma'am, I need you to breathe. Let us help you, please." The woman's chest heaved. Sweat glistened at her hairline. And for a moment, Emily saw something behind the fear. Guilt. "Take her in," Emily said at last. "Now." As the woman was gently escorted toward the private screening room, Shadow followed at her side. Silent now, but tense. Every muscle vibrating with the certainty of danger not yet seen. From the far end of the terminal, the hum of a camera lens zoomed in. A young man in a denim jacket stood among the crowd, filming everything with his phone. His name was Noah Reyes, 26, a freelance journalist chasing human interest stories for his small YouTube channel. He hadn't expected to capture anything worth uploading until now. The K9 barking, the terrified woman, the officer's commands, it all played like a scene from a thriller. Noah's heart raced as he whispered to his camera, "Seattle Airport lockdown. Police dog goes wild at pregnant passenger. This is unreal." He had no idea he'd just recorded the moment that would go viral in less than an hour. As the group disappeared behind the frosted glass doors of the security room, the crowd began to disperse, but whispers lingered in the air like smoke after fire. Emily exhaled slowly, her grip on the leash loosening. Shadow sat beside her, panting quietly, eyes still fixed on that closed door. "What did you find, boy?" she whispered. Shadow didn't answer, but his low, uneasy whine filled the silence like an omen. Outside, through the airport windows, the morning sun broke through the mist. Planes lifted into the sky one by one, unaware that inside the terminal a secret was about to unfold that would change everything. Emily rested a hand on Shadow's neck, feeling the faint tremor beneath his fur. "We'll figure it out," she murmured. "Together." And somewhere behind the frosted glass, a young woman's voice trembled through the static of the intercom. "Please, I just want to go home." The day had only just begun. The small screening room felt colder than the rest of the airport. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly above white-tiled walls, sterile and unwelcoming. Emily stood by the metal table with Shadow at her side, his breathing steady but his eyes sharp and fixed. The frosted glass door shut behind them with a dull thud, muting the chaos outside. Only the trembling sound of the woman's breathing filled the silence. The young woman, the one everyone had seen clutching her belly, sat in the corner of the room, shaking. Up close, she looked even more fragile. Her face was pale, freckles scattered across her nose, eyes wide and red from crying. Her long blonde hair clung to her damp forehead, and her beige coat, once neat, was now creased and spotted with tears. She couldn't have been older than 28. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm not a criminal. I'm pregnant. I swear." Emily studied her quietly, crossing her arms. "Then we'll prove that," she said evenly. "You'll be fine if everything checks out." Her tone was calm, but her eyes searched deeper. Not for guilt, but for truth. Shadow sat near the woman's chair, his ears perked, tail low. His chest rumbled with a faint, uncertain growl. It wasn't anger, it was confusion. He tilted his head, sniffing the air around the woman, and then gave a soft, low whine. Emily crouched beside him, hand resting lightly on his neck. "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" she murmured. Shadow's gaze shifted toward the woman's stomach, then back to Emily. It was enough to send a chill through her. Two other officers stood nearby. One was Officer Daniels, a young man in his late 20s, stocky build, sandy hair, and an expression that mixed curiosity with unease. The other, Officer Perez, was older, mid-40s, Hispanic, calm and methodical, the kind of man who followed protocol to the letter. Perez glanced at his watch. "We should call in a medical screener just to be safe," he said. "If she's pregnant, we need to confirm before doing any scans." Emily nodded. "Agreed, but no one touches her until Shadow calms down." Daniels raised an eyebrow. "You trust the dog more than the scanner?" Emily gave him a look that could cut glass. "He's saved more lives than any machine you've worked with." The door opened, and a woman in a white lab coat stepped inside. She was Dr. Claire Rowan, the airport's on-call medical technician. In her early 40s, she had sharp blue eyes and the composed manner of someone used to emergencies. "What do we have?" she asked briskly, snapping on a pair of latex gloves. "Passenger claims pregnancy," Perez explained. "K9 reaction triggered at checkpoint. No obvious threat." Dr. Rowan's gaze flicked to Shadow, who stood alert, tail rigid. "That's one serious dog," she murmured. Emily gave a small nod. "He's never wrong." The doctor turned towards the woman, softening her tone. "I'm just going to take a quick scan, okay? It's completely safe. You'll feel a little vibration, nothing else." The woman's lip trembled. Please, don't hurt my baby." Dr. Rowan smiled gently. "We're not here to hurt anyone." She rolled the portable scanner closer, a handheld ultrasound device linked to a monitor. As she positioned the probe near the woman's abdomen, Shadow suddenly rose from his sit position, muscles stiffening. He emitted a sharp bark that echoed against the sterile walls. "Shadow, heel," Emily ordered, but the dog ignored her. He stepped forward, placing himself between the doctor and the woman, teeth bared but eyes not on the doctor, rather on someone behind her. A man had just entered the room, a tall paramedic in a dark red uniform carrying a med kit. He looked around with forced calm. "Sorry, I was called to assist," he said, voice smooth, too smooth. "Someone requested a medic." Perez frowned. "That was quick." The man smiled faintly. "I was nearby." Emily's instincts flared. "Name and ID?" The paramedic hesitated a beat too long. James Howard." Shadow growled louder, stepping closer. His fur bristled, low warning vibrations rising from his chest. Emily's eyes narrowed. "Step away from the patient." "Ma'am, I'm just trying to—" "Now!" Her voice cracked like a whip. The man froze, his smile slipping. The tension in the room was electric. Dr. Rowan looked between them, confused, still holding the probe mid-air. Daniel's hand hovered over his holster. Perez moved in, checking the man's badge. It looked official. Too official? Emily leaned closer, spotting the microgloss sheen of a freshly laminated print. "That ID's fake," she said flatly. Before the man could react, Shadow lunged forward, barking explosively. The paramedic stumbled back, knocking over a stool. Perez tackled him to the ground, the med kit spilling open, and from inside, a small injector pen rolled out. The label read, "Sedative Compound." Dr. Rowan gasped. "What on earth?" Perez cuffed the man's wrists. "Looks like your dog just saved us some trouble," he said grimly. Emily's pulse was still pounding. She knelt beside Shadow, who sat panting, his ears still flat. "Good work," she whispered, rubbing his neck. The fake paramedic was dragged out by airport security. Dr. Rowan turned back to her patient, visibly shaken. "Let's continue," she said, voice steadier than her hands. The woman, Anna, was crying now. "I didn't know him. I swear, I didn't know." Emily nodded quietly. "Just breathe. You're safe now." Dr. Rowan reactivated the scanner. The monitor flickered to life with shades of gray and white. For a few seconds, nothing unusual appeared, just the faint outline of a round shape beneath the woman's skin. Then a sharp beep pierced the silence. "Hold on," Dr. Rowan muttered. She adjusted the probe. The image shimmered, and something metallic flashed on the screen. "What's that?" Daniels asked. Dr. Rowan frowned deeply. That's not human tissue. There's a dense material layer. Metal fragments, maybe composite polymers. And," she turned the knob, zooming closer, "fluid compartments." Emily's stomach dropped. Fluid? Something viscous, encased in tubing. Whatever this is, it's not a normal pregnancy. Anna's eyes widened. No, please." She clutched her stomach. "You're wrong. It's my baby." Shadow let out a mournful whine and stepped closer, nose twitching near her knees. The sound wasn't threatening. It was pleading. Dr. Rowan's voice softened. "Ma'am, whatever this is, we need to remove it carefully. It could be dangerous." Anna's breath hitched. "Dangerous?" Emily crouched beside her. "Listen to me. We're not here to hurt you, but there's something inside you that shouldn't be there. Do you understand?" Tears rolled down the woman's cheeks. "I didn't know," she whispered. "They told me it was medicine, that it would help me." Before she could finish, her body went rigid. Her eyes fluttered. The color drained from her face. "Vitals dropping," Dr. Rowan shouted, rushing forward. The scanner slid off her lap as she reached for a stethoscope. Her pulse is erratic." Anna convulsed once, then collapsed sideways, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Emily caught her before she hit the ground. "Anna, stay with me," Shadow barked once, a sharp, alarmed sound. "Call for med evac," Dr. Rowan ordered. Daniels sprinted to the radio panel. "Medical team to screening bay 3. Possible collapse." Anna's lips moved weakly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please, save my baby." Emily felt her chest tighten. "You're going to be okay," she said softly. "You're safe now." Dr. Rowan grabbed her equipment, scanning again, her expression turning grave. "There's internal bleeding, or rupture. One of those compartments might have leaked." Emily helped lift Anna onto a stretcher as the emergency crew rushed in. Real paramedics this time, verified through ID. The air was thick with urgency, beeping monitors and commands shouted between the staff. Shadow paced near the door, whining low. Every sound of distress from the woman made him bark once, then whine again, as if urging the humans to hurry. When they wheeled Anna out, Emily followed, her face pale under the harsh white light. Perez approached her, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Carter, what the hell just happened in there?" Emily stared down the corridor where the stretcher disappeared. "Something bigger than we thought," she said, "and it's just starting." Shadow stood beside her, his head low but his eyes fierce. For a moment, she reached down, running her fingers through his fur. His body trembled, not from fear, but anticipation. Whatever was hidden inside that woman, he had known before anyone else. Outside, the hallway lights flickered once as the medical team vanished around the corner. The air in the terminal suddenly felt heavier, as if the building itself sensed the secret now uncovered. Emily turned to Perez. "Get the footage from the cameras. I want to know who that fake medic came with. No one moves in or out without clearance." Perez nodded. "On it." She straightened her shoulders, exhaled slowly, and looked down at her canine partner. "You were right again, Shadow." The dog met her eyes with silent understanding. Somewhere beyond the walls, an intercom announced another departing flight. To everyone else, it was a normal day at Seattle Airport. But for Emily Carter, the clock had just started ticking on something far darker than routine security work. Chapter 3. The Secret in the ER. The ambulance doors slammed open with a metallic clang. Fluorescent lights streaked across the sterile hallway as paramedics rushed the stretcher through the emergency bay. Anna lay pale and motionless, her blonde hair clinging to her damp forehead, her lips trembling with shallow breaths. Emily jogged beside the stretcher, her police uniform disheveled, one hand gripping the rail. Shadow padded close behind, his claws clicking softly against the linoleum, his amber eyes never leaving Anna's face. Every few seconds the dog whimpered. Low, anxious, almost human. Inside the emergency ward, the air was a mix of antiseptic and adrenaline. Female, approximately 28, cardiac instability, possible internal rupture, one of the paramedics shouted. The ER team moved fast, a blur of white coats and latex gloves. Emily stepped aside as a nurse ushered her and Shadow behind the red line. Through the glass window she watched as they wheeled Anna into the operating room. A tall surgeon in his early 50s appeared, his gray hair cropped short under his cap. His name tag read Dr. Nathan Cole, Chief of Trauma Surgery. He had the calm precision of a man who'd seen too much to be surprised anymore. "You the officer who brought her in?" he asked. Emily nodded, still breathing hard. "She's carrying something inside her. Not a child. A synthetic implant, filled with liquid narcotics. One tube ruptured." Dr. Cole's eyes darkened. "Then she's already in shock. Toxic absorption through tissue is fast. If we're lucky, we can stabilize her before the compound spreads." "Do whatever you can," Emily said quietly. He gave a curt nod before vanishing behind the double doors. Shadow whimpered again, pacing before the operating room, nose pressed against the sterile air vent as if he could smell her pain. Emily knelt beside him. "Stay close," she whispered. "She needs us to hold on." A nurse approached, a petite woman with auburn hair tucked under her surgical cap. Her name tag read Megan Porter, mid-30s, ER assistant. Her tone was kind but firm. "You can wait here, officer. I'll keep you updated." Emily nodded, grateful for the humanity in the woman's voice. Hours blurred together in the waiting area. The rhythmic beeping of machines drifted faintly through the glass walls. Shadow refused to sit. He remained near the door, tail low, ears twitching whenever someone walked past. After nearly 40 minutes, the lights above the operating room flicked from red to yellow. Emily rose instantly. The door opened and Dr. Cole stepped out, removing his gloves. His face was drawn but steady. "She's alive," he said. "For now." Emily exhaled. "What did you find?" He paused. "A prosthetic uterus. Custom silicone casing. Inside were 14 microtubes filled with liquefied narcotics, likely synthetic opiates. One had ruptured. We cleaned what we could, but the toxin already entered her bloodstream." Emily frowned. "She was carrying that much? It must have weighed close to 3 pounds, Dr. Cole finished. Whoever designed it knew exactly how to balance the weight to mimic pregnancy. It was surgical grade. This wasn't street-level work." Shadow gave a low growl, breaking the silence. Dr. Cole looked at the dog, almost smiling. "That animal has remarkable instincts. The toxin was minutes from reaching her heart." Emily placed a hand on Shadow's head. "He saved more people than most officers I know." The surgeon nodded respectfully. "She'll recover, but she'll need monitoring. We're moving her to Recovery Ward 3. He hesitated before lowering his voice. "Be careful, officer. A setup like this means she's just one piece of a bigger machine." When the doctor left, Emily walked toward the small glass room where Anna now lay connected to machines. Her skin was pale as paper, eyes half open. A monitor beeped softly beside her. Shadow sat outside the doorway, staring at her with quiet concern. Emily leaned closer to the observation window, and that's when she noticed it. A small silver bracelet on Anna's wrist, barely visible under the blanket. It wasn't hospital issue. The charm attached to it glinted under the fluorescent light, engraved with a tiny alphanumeric code, RX Alloy 302. She took a quick photo on her phone, zooming in on the engraving. RX, LA, Los Angeles, she murmured. The prefix looked familiar. It matched the identifier on the manifest she had seen last week for a shipment of medical prosthetics, routed from Los Angeles through the same airport. The same cargo lot where a customs officer had gone missing. Her heart quickened. Coincidence? Hardly. "Officer Carter," a voice interrupted behind her. It was Captain Ross, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing his airport security uniform and an expression of controlled irritation. His salt-and-pepper hair was combed perfectly despite the chaos. "I told you to file the report, not start your own investigation." Emily straightened. "Sir, I think the bracelet links this case to a shipment from LA. "Stop." Ross's tone was sharp enough to cut glass. "You're not cleared for interdepartmental cases. The DEA's been monitoring this route for months. You so much as sneeze in their direction, and this whole thing collapses under jurisdictional politics." Emily crossed her arms. "So we let it go? Someone stuffed narcotics inside a woman's body, almost killed her, and we just forget it?" Ross sighed. His eyes softened just slightly. "You've been through enough, Carter. I know you want justice, but this case is dangerous. You push too hard, and you'll be the next name on a blacklist you can't see." Shadow let out a low growl, stepping closer to Emily's leg. Ross glanced down. "Even your dog knows when to. Stand down." Emily met his gaze. "He knows when something smells wrong." Ross didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a folded note from his breast pocket and slid it onto the counter. Officially, you're done with this case. Unofficially, stay alive. Then he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing against the sterile floor. Emily unfolded the note when he was gone. It wasn't a reprimand. It was a list of initials and shipment codes. At the bottom, written in Ross's precise handwriting, was one phrase. If you dig, start here. Trust no one above level 3. She slipped the note into her pocket, her mind racing. Shadow nudged her knee softly, sensing her tension. She looked down at him and whispered, "We're not letting this go, are we?" His tail gave a faint thump against the floor, the closest thing to an answer she needed. Through the window, Anna stirred. Her eyes opened weakly, unfocused. "Officer," she whispered, her voice rasping like sandpaper. Emily stepped closer. "You're safe," she said softly. Anna blinked slowly, tears welling in the corners of her eyes. "They'll come. They'll come for me." "Who?" Emily asked. "The men who gave me this," Anna whispered, her gaze shifting toward her wrist. "They said, if I failed—" Her words faded into silence as her eyelids fluttered shut again. Emily called for a nurse, but her thoughts were already spiraling. There were people watching this, maybe even inside the hospital. She felt it in the static tension of the air. Minutes later, as the monitor settled into steady rhythm, Emily walked back into the corridor. The scent of antiseptic stung her nose. Shadow padded beside her, his ears twitching toward every sound. Down the hall, 2 men in gray suits passed by, flashing federal credentials to the nurse's station. Their eyes briefly met Emily's, cold, evaluating, the kind of stare that didn't belong to medics. Emily tightened her grip on Shadow's leash. She turned toward the elevator, pulling out her phone and opening the photo of the bracelet again. The code gleamed on the screen. RX-LA302. Shadow gave a small bark, a sharp, alert tone that echoed faintly in the empty hallway. Emily whispered under her breath, "Yeah, boy, I feel it too." Somewhere behind the sealed glass doors, Anna lay breathing shallowly, unaware that her survival had already triggered something much larger. Emily exhaled, her mind already connecting dots she wasn't supposed to. "Los Angeles," she murmured. "That's where it starts." Shadow looked up, amber eyes gleaming beneath the fluorescent lights, silent, loyal, unyielding. Outside, rain began to tap gently against the windows of the hospital, blurring the runway lights beyond. The night had only just begun, and Emily Carter knew the truth would no longer stay buried. Chapter 4. Chase Through the Rain. Rain poured over Seattle like a gray curtain, swallowing the streets in a sheet of noise and light. It was past midnight when Emily Carter sat in her patrol car, engine humming softly under the trembling streetlights. The windshield wipers beat in steady rhythm, slicing the darkness with arcs of clarity. Beside her, Shadow sat upright, his tan and black fur damp from the drizzle that had followed them since the hospital. His amber eyes never left the warehouse across the runway, the same one linked to the medical shipment from Los Angeles. Emily's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Captain Ross's warning still echoed in her mind. "Don't dig deeper, Carter." But her instincts screamed otherwise. The bracelet, the fake pregnancy, the federal suits, none of it was coincidence. And Ross's secret note, folded in her jacket pocket, had listed that same warehouse code, RX-LA302. She turned to Shadow. "You ready, partner?" she whispered. Shadow gave a low growl, not aggression, but affirmation. The night was alive with distant thunder as she stepped out, pulling her dark waterproof jacket over her uniform. The air smelled of fuel and salt from the nearby docks. Across the lot, the warehouse stood under harsh industrial lights. Workers loading crates marked medical supply. Priority into a white freight truck. Emily crouched behind a line of cargo containers, observing. The workers moved fast. Too fast for a regular shipment. Among them was a tall man in his 40s, his slick black hair plastered to his forehead by rain. He barked orders in a voice rough from years of cigarettes. His name tag, barely visible under his reflective vest, read Victor Hale. Emily recognized him instantly. Former customs supervisor dismissed years ago for misplaced cargo manifests. Rumor had it he'd gone off the grid and started a private transport company. Seeing him here confirmed it. Hale wasn't just moving drugs, he was running the network. Shadow's ears perked. Emily followed his gaze to a covered tarp near the loading ramp. Beneath the flapping fabric, faint metallic clinks echoed, the same sound she'd heard described by Dr. Cole when explaining the fake silicone implant. She felt the adrenaline spike. She whispered into her radio, "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter. Possible illegal transport under RXLA 302 at Bay 17. Need backup." Static hissed. Then silence. Emily froze. The channel was dead. Jammed. Her eyes darted back to the truck. The workers began sealing the cargo doors and Hale climbed into the driver's seat. Without hesitation, Emily drew her sidearm, motioning Shadow forward. "We're not losing him," she murmured. The truck's engine roared to life. Emily sprinted to her car, Shadow leaping gracefully into the passenger seat. Tires screeched against wet asphalt as she pulled out, headlights slicing through the rain. The truck sped down the service road toward the airport exit, water spraying from its tires like white fire. "Dispatch, do you copy?" Emily tried again, but the static only deepened. She pressed harder on the accelerator, heart pounding. Shadow barked once, sharp and urgent. The chase tore through the rain-slicked roads. Streetlights flickered past in blurs of gold. The truck barreled through a checkpoint, smashing a barrier in half. Emily swerved around debris, her tires skidding dangerously close to the guardrail. Through the windshield, she saw Hale glance into his side mirror. His expression cold, mechanical. He wasn't just fleeing, he was heading somewhere. Then a flash of red caught her eye. A figure darting across the road ahead, camera in hand. It was Noah Reyes, the young freelance journalist who had been filming at the airport earlier. Soaked to the bone, his dark curls plastered against his forehead, he waved frantically toward Emily's car. "Emily, it's him!" he shouted through the rain. She didn't have time to question how he'd found her. "Get out of the road!" she yelled, swerving past him. Noah jumped aside just in time, his camera still rolling, capturing everything. The police cruiser's lights flashing in the downpour, the white truck fishtailing across the slick highway. He ducked behind a guardrail and kept filming, his breath fogging the lens. Ahead, the truck veered sharply onto a dirt access road leading toward the industrial pier. Mud splattered across Emily's windshield. "He's heading for the docks," she said, gripping the wheel. Shadow braced himself, front paws on the dashboard, barking twice, the signal they'd trained for. Target cornered. The chase reached its breaking point as Hale's truck skidded near the pier's edge, tires spinning in puddles. Emily slammed the brakes and jumped out, weapon drawn. Rain hammered down, soaking her to the bone. "Victor Hale, step out of the vehicle." Hale revved the engine instead. The truck lurched forward, toward the edge, toward the black water below. "Shadow, go!" The German shepherd launched forward like lightning, his powerful form slicing through the rain. He darted in front of the truck, barking ferociously, forcing Hale to swerve. The vehicle fishtailed, screeched, then slammed into a cargo container. Steam hissed from the crushed radiator. Hale stumbled out, clutching his shoulder. Emily advanced, weapon steady. "It's over," she said. Hale sneered, rain streaming down his face. "You think you've stopped it? There's another shipment tomorrow. You can't touch them. You're just a pawn." Emily's jaw tightened. "Then I'm a pawn with teeth." Shadow growled, stepping closer, fangs bared but restrained. Hale's eyes flicked toward the dog, and for the first time, his bravado faltered. Behind them, Noah arrived, camera still running, capturing the confrontation in sharp clarity despite the storm. "Officer Carter," he shouted over the wind. "Keep talking. This is going live." Emily didn't look at him. She clicked her cuffs onto Hale's wrists. "You're under arrest for narcotics trafficking, human endangerment, and about a dozen federal violations. Smile for the camera." Hale spat at her boots. "They'll kill me before morning." "Then you'd better hope the law gets to you first," she replied coldly. As backup sirens finally pierced the night, Emily holstered her gun and turned to Shadow. The dog limped slightly, one paw bleeding from the gravel. She knelt, brushing his fur gently. "You did good, boy," she whispered. Shadow pressed his head against her chest, tail giving a weak wag. Noah approached cautiously, lowering his camera. His face, though soaked and pale, carried awe. "I got everything," he said. "The truck, the arrest, the confession. This'll blow the lid off everything." Emily nodded, but her gaze lingered on the crashed vehicle. "Make sure they see it for what it is," she murmured. "Not a headline. A warning." Lightning split the sky, followed by the slow roll of thunder. As officers arrived and secured the scene, Hale was loaded into the back of a police van, his defiance replaced by quiet dread. Emily sat in her cruiser again, rain pounding against the roof. Shadow rested his head on her lap, eyes closing. She gently wrapped his paw with a strip of gauze from the first aid kit. "We're done, partner," she said softly. "For tonight, at least." Outside, Noah's footage streamed to his live feed, the title flashing across millions of screens. "Airport drug ring exposed. Officer and K9 take down criminal network in stormy chase." As the van disappeared into the wet darkness, Emily leaned back in her seat, exhaustion washing over her. The rain softened, turning from thunderous roar to gentle patter. She glanced at Shadow, who met her eyes with that steady, unspoken bond only years of trust could forge. "We did it," she said quietly. Shadow's tail thumped once, slow and certain. The rain that had once swallowed Seattle's skyline had long since passed. A week had gone by since the night of the chase, and the city now awoke under a soft, forgiving light. The hospital overlooking Lake Washington glimmered in that morning sun, tall glass walls breathing warmth back into the world that had almost drowned in storm and fear. Inside room 312, machines hummed gently, rhythmically, a quiet symphony of recovery. Anna Morales opened her eyes to the pale morning. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The ceiling too white, the smell too clean. Her hand trembled as she reached for the bandage across her abdomen. When her vision cleared, she saw flowers by the window, wild daisies and a single blue hydrangea, a note tucked among the stems. "You made it through." E. Her breath hitched. Emily Carter. The door creaked open and Emily stepped in, her dark navy uniform replaced by a gray sweater and jeans. Her face still held the edge of discipline, but her eyes, those steady green eyes, had softened. She looked less like a police officer today and more like a guardian who had finally allowed herself to rest. Shadow trotted in beside her, tail swaying gently. The 5-year-old German Shepherd's fur gleamed under the sunlight that poured through the blinds. His front paw was wrapped in a small bandage, yet his stride was proud, confident. The moment he saw Anna, his ears perked and he padded over to her bedside. Without a sound, he rested his heavy head gently on her arm. Anna's breath broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks, one hand trembling as she stroked the dog's damp fur. He saved me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I remember. His eyes. He wasn't angry. He was trying to warn me." Emily smiled faintly, pulling up a chair. "That's what he does," she said softly. "He doesn't just find danger. He feels it." She reached down to scratch behind Shadow's ear, the dog closing his eyes in quiet satisfaction. Anna's gaze turned distant. "They told me. The others were caught." Emily nodded. "The operation's over. The warehouse, the couriers, even Victor Hale, all in custody. Noah's footage made it impossible for them to hide. The press is calling it the biggest airport trafficking bust in years. A shadow crossed Anna's face. And my son? Did they... They found him, Emily interrupted gently. Safe. He's been with Child Services in Tacoma. I've already filed your asylum request. You'll see him again soon. Anna pressed her hands to her face, sobbing openly now. Not from fear, but release. For months she'd been a vessel of terror, carrying death disguised as innocence. Now, for the first time, she felt clean. Outside the door, Captain Ross leaned against the wall, watching silently. The man in his 50s looked weathered, but solid. His posture straight despite the weight of bureaucracy that so often bent good officers. He wore his badge clipped to a civilian jacket today, a small symbol that this visit wasn't official. He entered quietly, nodding toward Emily. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, his voice deep and calm. "You disobeyed a direct order." Emily's heart skipped, but Ross's mouth curved into a rare smile. "And because of that, you stopped a federal disaster before it reached 3 more states." He extended his hand. "You trusted your instincts, and your partners. That's what real police work is." Emily shook his hand firmly. "I didn't do it alone," she said, glancing down at Shadow, who wagged his tail softly in response. Ross crouched to pat the dog's head. "Then I suppose we owe this one a medal too." The tension broke. Anna laughed weakly through her tears, and even Emily's stoic composure cracked into a grin. For the first time in weeks there was warmth in the room, not from the sunlight but from the feeling that something good had survived the storm. Later that afternoon, as the sky shifted from gold to lavender, Emily stood by the hospital's lakeside garden waiting. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. She looked up as Anna appeared, slowly walking toward her, her hospital gown replaced by a pale coat borrowed from the nurse's station. Beside her walked a small boy, 6 years old, dark curls framing a round, gentle face. His eyes were wide with wonder as he spotted Shadow lying by the bench. The boy approached cautiously, clutching a worn-out toy airplane. "Is he friendly?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily knelt beside Shadow. "He's more than friendly," she said. "He's brave." Shadow lowered his head, tail thumping once against the wooden deck. The boy giggled, reaching out to touch his fur. For a second, the world froze in a perfect frame. The child's small hand on the dog's muzzle, sunlight glinting off the lake, and the faint reflection of all three mirrored in the water. Anna stood behind them, tears silently trailing down her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling, "for giving us this." Emily looked up at her. "You gave it to yourself," she said gently. "You spoke up when you didn't have to. You survived when no one thought you would. That takes more courage than anyone with a badge." From a few yards away, Noah Reyes adjusted his camera lens. He'd been following the story since the airport incident, and today he was finishing what he called his most human piece yet. He was drenched in afternoon light, his expression calm but intent, filming quietly so as not to intrude. He framed the shot: the officer, the rescued woman, the reunited child, and the dog lying peacefully between them. The lake shimmered behind them like liquid glass. The moment looked less like reality and more like redemption captured on film. When he lowered the camera, he smiled to himself. "Silent Bark, the dog who spoke without words," he murmured. "Perfect title." As the sun dipped behind the hills, the 4 of them sat by the water's edge. Emily leaned back against the bench, Shadow's head resting on her thigh. Anna sat beside her, holding her son close, his small fingers playing with Shadow's ear. Captain Ross stood a few paces away, his silhouette outlined by the golden horizon, watching his team, his family, in quiet pride. Emily exhaled slowly. "Feels like forever since it was quiet," she said. Ross smiled faintly. "That's the funny thing about storms," he said. "You don't realize how much you needed the silence until they pass." Shadow lifted his head briefly at the sound of a distant bird, then laid it back down. His fur glowed under the setting sun, the color of burnt honey. Emily rested a hand on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath her palm, the same rhythm that had guided her through chaos and doubt. She whispered, "We did good, didn't we?" Shadow's tail flicked once, soft and slow, his eyes closing in calm affirmation. As the camera rolled its final seconds, the world seemed suspended in light, the kind of moment that doesn't last but stays remembered. Anna's son leaned against his mother's shoulder. Ross turned away, pretending to check his phone just to hide his smile. Emily looked at the horizon, the first stars beginning to pierce through the fading gold. For once there was no urgency, no fear, no orders, just faith. Faith that doing the right thing, no matter how dangerous, still mattered. The breeze off the lake brushed past them, carrying with it the scent of wet grass and something like hope. And in that fragile stillness, Emily understood what this journey had been about all along. Not just justice, but trust. Trust in instincts. Trust in truth. Trust in the bond between two souls, one human and one canine, who listened beyond words. The sun finally sank below the trees, leaving behind a world washed clean.